Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Hangout. It's Sid. And if you love music as much as I do, well, this is the perfect podcast for you. Today, we've got, in my opinion, a Canadian legend who is a multi-talented guitar player, musical director, producer, composer, and engineer coming in from Toronto. He's worked alongside some of your favorite artists in the music industry, like Camila Cabello, John Mayer, Ed Sheeran, and of course, Shawn Mendes. I'm so excited to have Zubin Thakkar on today's episode. How are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's sunny over here in Vancouver, so that's all we can ask for.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's not here, but it's still a great day. Thank you for having me on.
I want to talk about your birthday last year. You celebrated it on a very special day, and I only know this because we have the same birthday, actually.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, November 25th, the Netflix live in concert film dropped on your birthday. What was it like getting to celebrate with such like a project that you were working on for so long?
It was really cool. I mean, it's always nice to have something, extra special about your birthday, I guess, if you want to say it that way. But yeah, it was really nice. It was just it was a neat moment for it to come out and, added a little bit of significance to it for me. So
Nice. I think Mike and Dave also mentioned that you guys watched it as a band, the live in concert film. What was that kind
yeah,
of like getting to sit with all your band members, rewatch like the iconic Toronto show?
that was awesome. That was like I was really happy that we had a chance to watch it together, because those were the guys that I was on stage with for 100 plus shows, and especially that Toronto show, which meant a lot to us to begin with because we're all from the Greater Toronto area. So watching it with them, there's so many like little inside moments that parts that like little musical like parts or looks and all that kind of stuff that we're all so familiar with. So to be able to like just like chuckle about it or a spot that you were like, oh, could have, I wish I'd done that better or whatever it might be. It's so nice to have the people who know the music, every minute detail of it, to kind of sit there and joke about it with those guys. They're my brothers. So like to be able to watch it together was amazing.
How long have you known all of the band members for? Because I think you and Mike go back quite a long time. And then, yeah.
Yeah, Mike and I think we met in 2010. And Eddie, I think I met around probably somewhere around the same time. Mike and I worked together a lot though for over the past 10 or 11 or 12, however long I've known him for. We have worked together quite a bit in various projects. Eddie working on the Shawn thing was the first thing we'd done together, but I'd known about him for a long time and his talent, and he'd worked with Mike a lot. And Dave, I met really at his kind of first Shawn Mendes audition is when I met Dave. So
That's crazy. We just launched the Dave episode and he was talking about his audition and how he had a little cloth and he wiped down his little bass and everything. And he was like, you guys weren't too impressed, but obviously he's there now. So something
exactly.
worked.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Dave is amazing, and he was like, he's such a great find, and I'm so happy that he's risen to the occasion the way that he has as well. He's just an incredible player and incredible hang and perfect. He's like the perfect person you want to have on the road with you.
That's amazing. You also got to do some audio mixing for the film as well as compose some instrumental pieces. What was that process kind of like?
Um, it was interesting because it was done over the course of 2020, which was a crazy year for everyone, and sort of a revamp on how you do and approach work. So it was intense, but it was also really great to be able to see the project all the way through to the end stage, where, of course, generally when you're putting together a tour, you spend a lot of time creating the musical arrangements and rehearsing them and then playing them in the moment, in the room at the show. And then that's the end of that moment. It ends, you know what I mean? And you do everything you can to make sure that the vision and execution of it all happens the way it's supposed to happen. But when it's something then is captured on film and the audio is captured and then lives on forever, then it's extra special to be able to make sure that that vision is seen all the way through to the end, the way the mixing process sometimes works is you do these things and you record the audio, you record the video, and then a third party kind of independent to the project kind of spends a couple days doing their thing, and then there it is. And maybe it's balanced the way you wanted to hear it and the way it's intended to be heard, or maybe it's a little bit off. And then, so to be able to actually, you know, take the project all the way through to that point and be like, no, this is how it's supposed to be presented, is great. You know, it was really like satisfying to be able to see the whole circular process of it.
That's so cool. I want to talk about kind of like the pre-production to a tour. And you
Sure.
mentioned before you have a strategy going into creating the set list. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So creating like a tour set list, or I mean, any kind of set list, whether it's a headlining show, like on a tour where you're going to be playing, you know, 60 or 90 minutes or something like that, like a long set for your audience, meaning like the artist is the headliner, you know, is different than when you create a set list for, say, a festival. Even if the artist might be the headliner of the festival, just because generally at a festival, you're going to be playing to lots of people who aren't just there just to see that artist. They're there to see all sorts of different bands and artists, and they might know a lot of the hits, but they might not know a lot of the other album tracks and things like that. While on a tour, you're likely, you know, the room is likely full of people who bought a ticket just to see that artist. So they are going to be much more familiar with all of the material, all the album tracks, all that kind of stuff. So you have more things to play with. And then also there's a difference between like a short set. So if you're doing like just a 30-minute festival set, or like a event, whatever it might be, it's some kind of short and 30-minute set versus 60 or 90 or longer. All those things kind of change how you have to look at the set list. So I'm pretty nerdy about it. I have a spreadsheet that I like to kind of crack open, and it kind of feels like it gives me the impression that I have some sort of, you know, control over the way it might be received at the end of the day. But I'll go through and put in, like, you know, it doesn't matter who the artist is, but I'll go through and get all the songs from all the albums that the artist might have out at the moment. And I'll kind of arrange it into columns by album. And then I'll go through and I'll highlight all the hits, you know, all the big songs, the big singles and stuff, maybe highlight them in green or whatever it is, bold them so that I can quickly identify where are those hit songs coming from, what album. So in terms of like, what time period did that come out at? So for an artist that, let's say, has 10 albums out, you want to know, and they're currently on selling their tour for the current album, like, you need to sort of be able to place enough hits from enough portions of their discography to keep it interesting for all the people that might be at the show. So anyways, I'll go through, identify the hits, and then I'll go through and I'll identify the tempo and key of each song. The tempo, for the sole reason that you want to make sure you're pacing the set list correctly when you're putting together a show. So you've got, you know, you don't just have like 4 or 5 slow songs all grouped together, or, you know, 7 or 8 of your really up-tempo songs, whether they're hits or album tracks or not. Those up-tempo energy moments, you need to use those and place them in strategic places to keep the energy going in the room, you know. Totally. So identifying that stuff is really important. And then I'll just start going through and playing with ideas, like just different orders, and making sure that if we want to do like an interesting transition, let's say from one song into another, sometimes you're lucky where the key of the songs might work out, you know, and you're able to flow from one song into the next with some sort of musical interlude that feels really cohesive. And if you're not, then sometimes that's where you have to get creative and figure out ways to sort of switch and change the keys to get yourself from point A to point B if you need a transition there. But it's an involved process, and I'll sort of put together some ideas. The artist always has lots of ideas on how the set should be, of course. And then depending on the team, maybe management, maybe, you know, the creative director who might be involved in a tour or a show might have ideas on certain songs and where they might be placed. A lot of discussion goes into the opening song and the closing song. Of course, those are like, you know, 2 of your biggest moments in the show. So it starts there, though.
That's crazy. When do you decide, or how do you decide when like guitar solos come in too? Because that's a big part of like the crowd going wild, and it's like, go, yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't really know how we decide. That's usually song dependent. It's not necessarily like we need it. Like there's never a point where it's like we need a guitar solo here. As much as I'd like to think there might be a need for it. It's usually like it's if the song calls for it. If it's not already in the song, meaning it's not already in the studio version, let's say if the song, some songs just lend themselves to the idea of an added section of something, like some kind of jam or solo or instrumental thing. And whether that turns into a guitar solo or just a cool jam, that sort of, that kind of depends on the song.
You've had like a crazy career over the last however many years. What do you think, I don't know if you can pinpoint it, but what is one of the biggest takeaways being in the music industry?
Sure. It is definitely I have found in my experience that it is definitely a journey, in the sense that like, there's not just like some sort of like magical moment that occurs, or like, and there's no path. There's no specific point A to point B path to it at all. Everyone I know has had a different experience in terms of how they've got where they are and whatever level of success that might be. But, some people go to school for music, some people don't. Some people go to school for like audio engineering, some people go on YouTube, you know what I mean? And some people have success right away. And some people have success after 10 years, you know what I mean? And some people don't, and some people just kind of will happily just kind of continue the work for the sake of doing the work because that's all they're interested in doing, so the biggest takeaway is to sort of like there's no specific point A to point B, and it's a marathon, and it's like it's all of those cliches that people say, but it really is the case. And if you want to do it, just do it. Like you just got to start doing it,
I think you've mentioned before that you feel like you've been living like a very surreal lifestyle and career, being able to do what you love. What was it like, or what do you have a specific point where you kind of realize like, whoa, I'm actually getting to do what I love for a living?
Yeah, those moments happen, and they happen a lot, and they generally happen, I find, when you're sort of out of the woods with something, like with a project, like while you're out. I mean, this is for everything. When you're in the middle of something and you're working intensely on something, and it could be a stressful experience or intense deadlines, whatever that stuff may be. It's not, you don't always see, you don't always have the perspective to be able to zoom out and see that, oh wow, I actually am doing the thing that I've always wanted to do. I like the process of it a lot. I like to celebrate all the small little blips of wins that come along the way. I'm a huge fan of that because it's a tough business, and like you have to stay optimistic within it because it's easy to get down on things. And I've been so lucky that I've had projects that have felt like growth always, so maybe it's easy for me to be able to say that, but like I celebrate every little thing that kind of pops up along the way. And by celebrate, I mean like I think of it like I'll be like, wow, that's cool that happened, and then kind of move on from it, of course. But like, you
truly love like the whole process, and it just shows that you really love what you're doing.
Yeah, you really, I like the nitty gritty of it. I'm not just like, oh, I just need to play. Like I only like playing shows, or,
Right.
I like the preparation that goes into it. I like the like agonizing over sounds and details of sounds, and all the post, mixing that can go into projects. And I do studio work as well outside of live work, and that in itself can be just a deep dive on minutia, and analyzing the tiniest little details that might be able to give you an extra 1%, 2% bump in quality of the product at the end of the day. All that stuff, I think it's important, and I don't mind slaving over it. Like I'm not a stranger to that. So I find that all sort of, while sometimes taxing, I do find it rewarding to be able to call that work. So.
Nice. Was there a point or specific time in your career where you realized you'd be able to do this full time?
No, and I still don't really it still seems insane to me. So I always just sort of feel like pinching myself, and I just find this all very surreal still, you know?
Because people ask you when you're growing up, you're like, oh, what do you want to do in the future? What's your career? And you're just like, I don't know. I just want to do something that I love. And I feel like that's exactly what you're doing right now.
It absolutely is. I can't say that it's not in any way. It is exactly what I love. And I didn't realize when, I was younger or a kid or in high school or whatever, that that you could do this as a job. You know what I mean? It always sort of just seemed like you know, either you were like a giant superstar or you weren't doing something in music, just because I didn't realize there are so many different things you can do within the industry. Like, for example, the job I currently do, or the jobs I currently do, I should say, you don't always hear about those as when you're a kid, as much as you just hear about being in a band or being a singer, whatever that is, So I didn't necessarily, I just was sort of obsessed with music and just like kept chasing and chasing and chasing something. And then I kind of eventually turned into something with a bit more structure, and eventually turned into something where it was a gig, like you were actually hired to do something, I don't, I know it sounds strange, but it was just like a obsessive hobby that I did never stop doing,
Well, that's inspiring for people who are kind of like the dreamer type, where they think they can just do what they love and turn it into something. And so your story is an inspiration for many people.
Well, great. I didn't always think that way, because I went to school for a very stable, systems design engineering, which is essentially a computer engineering. So I went to school for 5 years to university, and it wasn't while I was doing that, I didn't assume that I would just be a musician instead. I didn't really know what I thought at the time, I think, in terms of what I would do for for my career or job or whatever. But it just sort of worked out that way, because I never let the music side go. I just kept doing it, and I wasn't necessarily doing it with a specific, a really realized goal in mind. I was just kind of chasing it, something that I love to do. And it kind of snowballed into this.
That's just crazy. For your earlier experiences, from being a director at your talent show in high school to your band Prize Fighters, how did that kind of prepare you for the career that you have today?
So in my high school, there was a talent show that was all student run, and I was really heavily involved in it, right starting sort of from grade 9, through till the end of high school. And it, I joke about it, but it's very similar to the job I have as a musical director now, where you're, auditioning players, putting together a band, creating a set list based around a theme, and then rehearsing those songs, till they sound as good as they possibly can. And then eventually going and you put on a big show, and there's sound and lights that you have to consider, obviously it's all at a much different scale and much different everything, but the sort of core idea of it is very much the same. And then that talent show, gave me the confidence to think that, I want to have my own band. I started my own band, wrote my own songs. I was the singer in the band, produced the records at home, learned how to do all that stuff. And again, just sort of I would just keep chasing these things, even if I didn't know how to do something, or didn't know someone to do something for something music related, I would just try to figure out how to do it myself. So that sort of mentality just kind of kept going. And it was sort of, it very much prepared me for, my, start as a professional quote unquote musician, because that is what it is. You just have to keep doing things yourself. You have to figure things out and do them, in the context of music,
What are you most looking forward to when this whole pandemic is kind of over and everyone can go back on the road and make music and do that? What are you most looking forward to?
Most looking forward to, I mean, I love just I love making the sounds. And what I mean by that, I love, like, we put our in-ears that we're in a rehearsal. It doesn't matter if it's a rehearsal or a show or a recording studio or whatever it is. I get a lot of satisfaction from putting on the headphones, putting on the in-ears or whatever it is, and just playing songs, period, whatever they are, for whoever they are. And kind of going from that point of how should this sound to this is it, the end product of that, and playing it 100 times, like I really get a lot of satisfaction out of the sonics of it all. And the sort of the A to B, the start a song, how is this supposed to go, to the finished product of it. So I get a lot of satisfaction from that. And obviously we haven't been doing a lot of that, and no one has. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But I'm also like, I'm really looking forward to just playing shows again, how whatever, in whatever capacity that might be, and it's always like a cherry on top when you get to travel. That's amazing, so I'm looking forward to that. That'll be, it sounds so strange to even say it right now, because it's like literally the opposite of what we're all doing and what we're sort of, should be doing, which is, to sort of stay at home and not travel and not be out there in the world, which is completely fair right now. But it'll be nice when that's safe to do that again.
Yeah, totally. It was, well, watching back like the live in concert and seeing that many people inside of Rogers Center, and just like the crowds and crowds, I was like, we were at that point where we could do that, and I was like, whoa.
I know, not that long ago, I mean, a year and a half ago, we were all doing that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I was scrolling on your Instagram, and I truly see your biggest smile when you are on stage. You just have the time of your life. For the Hangout or show, we always want to talk about sort of how music impacts you. And this is a deep philosophical question. It's not an easy one to answer, but by all means. But how do you think music has changed your life or impacted it in your own way?
I mean, it has made, a giant difference on my life for so many reasons, like going all the way back to when I first got into music. So I got my first guitar in grade 7, and that changed my life at the time. It like really brought me out of my shell and all the things that, you hear about when you kind of find something you love to do and want to share it. Because like I was always very much into the idea of like playing music with other people, being in a band, starting a band, finding a band, doing all that stuff was like priority number one. A lot. It wasn't just play alone in my room kind of. I always wanted to like do something and make it like, I wanted to sound or feel like the videos I used to see on Much Music when I was a kid in grade 7, and I would chase that. So it changed my life when I got my guitar. And then of course, like, fast forward to when I started doing it more professionally, that changed my life too. I never thought that, I was always like, am I going to work in an office, or am I going to be an engineer, or like, what am I doing? Am I a programmer? I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have a clear vision of that. So when the music thing started actually to work, like I started working, of course, it changed my life and my perspective on everything again. And then take, 5 years forward to, when I got the call to work on the Shawn project, that changed my life, of course, too. I really sort of notice it and feel the sort of connection I have to certain songs and certain moments, certain concerts, whatever it might be. So it's no doubt that it's had a giant impact on every day of my life.
That's amazing. And do you find that you have different takeaways with music when you're playing it versus creating it to listening to it?
Yeah, I definitely. I really appreciate the moments lately, especially over the last, 6 months to a year, where I've started taking like these really long walks, trying to walk 10,000 steps a day. So I've got my headphones in now. And I've reconnected with the idea of just listening to music, which is nice, because sometimes when you're in the middle of like working a lot on music, you're not always just popping your headphones in or listening to music just for fun, and if you are, sometimes you're doing it and you're referencing other music, you're referencing other ideas, or even if you're trying to listen to something just for the sake of listening to it, if you're really hyper in work mode, and all of a sudden your like brain is analyzing all these things you're hearing, and you don't necessarily want to be doing that. So I've really appreciated over the last little while, just being able to kind of like walk and kind of zen out and just listen to music. And it's been amazing. I also have I've got 2 little boys at home. So we listen to a lot of like Disney music and things like that, which in itself, I mean, some of the greatest songs ever. But also a really great way to just appreciate music without analyzing it, because you know that stuff is very disconnected from a lot of the work that I do, but also seeing its effect on them. They're 3 and 6 years old, so seeing what music does and to them and how they react to certain songs and how they sing along or how they dance along is like, it rekindles your appreciation and love for what music is, or even what I think I might be adding into the sort of general spectrum of music, you know?
Totally. Are you finding yourself teaching them guitar or like other instruments as well?
A little bit, but not a lot. Like they love the idea of it all. They love, like they're quite familiar with the concept of all these things, like concerts and live music versus studio music. Like, you know what I mean? Like they under the 6-year-old, he understands those differences. He's kind of seen it a lot. And like when I'm working in Pro Tools, which is sort of this music program that I do a lot of work within, like they'll pop down all the time and see what I'm up to. And, you know, you're able to sort of solo out and different tracks of a big song you might be working on and explain to them, this is how a song comes together. So I can play just the drums of a section, or just the snare drum, or just the guitar part, or just the backup vocals, or whatever it is. They're definitely developing some sort of concept of what that means. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Might take, peeling the curtain back too quickly. I don't know. But I don't, like, we don't sit down for guitar lessons or anything like that. They're way too crazy right now for that stuff. And I don't think they would sit down for me. I think they'll probably need to kind of have like, a third party sort of teacher involved, but they're around it a lot, which is cool. And they definitely feel they have like a feel connection to it, which is great, and that's just as important, I think, as the technicality of where your hands go.
And that's why I think it's so special, because like every single episode we talk to different artists, and every single time there's a new story of how music is impacting their life. And it's so cool to hear your story. What do you think is you're constantly pushing yourself and you're always wanting to learn and grow. What is your 5-year goal? Maybe 5-year goal.
Wow. I would love to still be doing what I love in 5 years from now, whether it's very specifically in music, in this exact context. I just want to be able to love what I do always. It's such a gift, and like I would hate for that to ever be taken away from me.
What are you doing to continue to grow and learn, because you have been doing this for so long? Yeah,
totally. I'm constantly listening, constantly watching things. There's been so much content that's come out over the past year. Mm-hmm. Even though we're in the middle of level, because we're in this strange situation in the world, artists are doing so much and releasing so much content now. There's all these live streams all the time, and there's just so much out there. So I'm constantly watching things, constantly listening, working on different sounds. When it comes to guitar stuff, I'm endlessly tweaking tones and ideas and different effects. I'm really into the gear of everything, so I'm always researching. I'm always on YouTube watching gear videos and tutorials on this thing, or I might hear like a really great drum sound on something, and I'll try to chase down how to make that sound. Or might hear a really great mix, like a complete mix of something in the live context or in the studio context. So you're constantly sort of searching those things out, and how to better your craft. It's an endless quest, which is what's probably exciting about it too. Because what's great too, because people are like, the music is a creative field, so everyone around you is constantly growing and therefore pushing you. And it's like sort of like a cyclical thing that occurs. Everyone continues to grow, and then I better learn how to do that. Grow. Okay. Oh, someone just saw that. We better learn how to do that. Grow, so there's this kind of constant effect of that happening.
Totally. Okay, I will end this podcast episode. You mentioned Disney. What is the Disney song that you're dancing to, singing to, having a jam out session with?
Well, right. So we just watched I actually don't think this is a Disney movie, but it's close enough. We watched the movie Ferdinand last week.
Oh, nice.
Amazing movie. I actually don't know who did it, but it's a great kids movie. And there's this really great song in it called, I'm just looking it up. I think it's called Lay Your Head on Me. I think Juanes does it. He's a Latin artist, I think. It's this right here. I won't play it for you, but I will just show you the album cover for those who want to watch it. Really, it's a really cute movie, but the song is really great. And if that doesn't bring a smile to your face, then I mean, you got to get your ears checked.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show and chatting about music. It was a pleasure. That was Zubin Thakkar.
Thank you for having me.